it's going to be fire today because on today's Hoop Dreams podcast, man, we have a man doing some important work in the basketball community. He grew up in New York, played at Iona College, coached high school basketball in Alabama, worked for the Memphis Grizzlies in the community development department, and then, get this, AG, in the year 2015, founded the nonprofit Project Backboard, which is celebrating its 10th year. They've been killing it out there. Its 10th year of operations. And this is what's really special here. This is, when I talk about life stories and basketball stories, AG, they have refurbished over 100 basketball courts across the U.S., Puerto Rico, Canada, Mexico, Japan, Portugal, and of course, they have done the ultimate, the #1 basketball court refurbished anywhere, which is the Hoop Dreams court in our hometown, Chicago, in Garfield Park. But now he currently resides in California, where he still, get this, man, after doing all of that, coaching youth basketball. You're talking about a love for the game? We like to welcome to the Hoop Dreams podcast, the one, the only, Mr. Project Backboard himself, Mr. Dan Peterson. Dan, welcome to the show, man.
I appreciate it. Honored to be on. Love that introduction. I'm gonna have to save that and like frame it.
Man, we are so glad to have you on the show. First of all, before we even get started into everything, man, Agee and I, we just want to thank you, man, for what you did for us in Chicago. The court that was done in Garfield Park, west side of Chicago, man, our home, has not only solidified in our hearts what playground basketball is all about, but what it has also done, man, it has cemented Agee and I, not just from a basketball perspective, but that the Hoop Dreams itself has meant more than what we could have ever imagined. So, Dan, we just want to thank you for that, man, because that has been truly special and like top level, man, in our lives. So thank you for that.
Well, I appreciate it. And, an honor to be a part of the Hoop Dreams legacy and like, Hoop Dreams ideas. That's what public basketball courts are. They're kind of dream spaces, right? It's like that's where you have those dreams, where those dreams start. And so like to be connected with Hoop Dreams and everything you guys have done to be able to be a part of the Chicago community that way, just obviously just a special basketball community at large is, an honor. And appreciate you guys for welcoming us into your community and letting us work there. It's, like I said, truly an honor.
Well, Dan, we call this the Agee Engage show, man, but the reality is, man, this is your show today. This is your show, so we want to know about you. We want to know, man, give us your origin story. Like, where did you grow up?
Sure. Yeah. So I grew up in New York, upstate New York, place called Putnam County. So we were literally the last stop on the Metro North Railroad, the commuter rail out of New York City. So close enough to know New York existed, close enough to take the train down to a couple Knicks games. So still felt that that connection there, but also still kind of suburban, kind of rural. But for me, I think I probably like fell in love with basketball probably around 92, 93, probably 10 years old, and those first Knicks teams, really with the first iteration of the Ewing Starks teams that were battling with the Bulls. Is kind of like I remember watching them on TV and then running out to the driveway and shooting around, and that kind of planted the seed that grew, to everything that came afterwards. But yeah, grew up, in the kind of a rural community. Grew up playing a lot of basketball by myself. Got to high school, obviously played for the high school team. Actually, my dad was from New York, so we would, in the summers, we'd go down to Queens and enter into a lot of summer tournaments, playing outdoor basketball in New York, and just fell in love like with playing basketball outdoors.
What was that basketball scene like? I mean, we hear a lot about the New York basketball scene, but you kind of being on the outskirts of that. What was your basketball scene like?
Yeah, I mean, I look forward every year to the end of like the end of the real basketball season, like the end of the school season, so we could, enter into summer tournaments in New York and play outdoors. And, I think even though we were, fairly far from New York, still growing up and thinking about summer basketball as being what happens outdoors and just the idea of official games happening. That's something I think had a big influence on what came later with Project Backboard, moving to Memphis and realizing, oh, there's not tournaments in every city park here. That's not the way every place does basketball. So I think that had a big influence. But I remember as a kid just playing a lot of outdoor basketball. I used to get booted from the hoop outside the high school.
Yes.
Right after midnight, the cops would show up. Be like, "All right, time to go." Yeah, sort of being somewhat obsessed with it. But that obsession always manifested outdoors. There was rarely gyms we could get into, and so that sort of idea of basketball is something that happens in the outdoor space was a big part of that experience growing up.
Now you said your dad coached you.
My dad coached, yeah, just youth rec league teams. So up until I think he coached me till seventh grade, and then he wanted us to be exposed to New York City basketball, which is different from upstate New York basketball because the outdoor tournaments and being able to have that experience playing in parks and there being fans in the stands and all the characters that are around the game in a public park setting, right? Because there's no threshold you have to walk through to get into the court. There's no gatekeepers. It's a public park. So that was experience. And where I grew up, nobody was creating those experiences for kids other than people like my dad who grew up there and loved basketball like I did.
Now, in your neighborhood where you grew up, obviously you played on the outdoor courts doing your things. Man, I just gotta ask, growing up in your family, are you got siblings? Because I want to know who put the ball in your hand. Like I know you said you fell in love when you were
Yeah.
10 and you was out there on the basketball court, but who put the ball in your hand?
So I'm sure my dad did, but like I'm the third oldest out of eight kids.
Wow.
So I've got an older brother, an older sister, and then I've got four younger brothers and a younger sister. So we got enough for a whole squad. So even though we were growing up in a fairly rural community between all of us, some of us were closer in age than others, but between all of us, there was always something happening on the court in our driveway. So I think my older brother was more into individual sports. And so I was like first in my family to get really um, into basketball in a big way. Um, and then I think a lot of my other siblings, I had a brother, my next younger brother, he played in high school, but for a team that lost in the finals of the state championship, so a good high school player. And then I had two other siblings who played college basketball on some level. So just a lot of basketball in our family. And then now with Project Backboard, one of my brothers is kind of our lead project manager. So basketball and family to me still are very closely related.
I'm loving that. I'm loving that. Now you grew up playing. Now, what was the name of the high school you played at?
Place called Carmel High School.
Carmel High School. How
Yeah.
was who was like before you?
Uh-huh.
That hovers over there.
I'll give you briefly like a little bit of the background to it. So before I was a senior, like I don't think our high school had a winning record in 10 years. I think like we had lost a lot of basketball games. Then the summer before my senior year of high school, they built a new court outside the middle school in our community. That was the court I was talking about. Like I'd be shooting under the security lights. Um, but what happened was that fall of my senior year, we started organizing a player-led pickup on that court every day after school. Um, and we ended up having our best year in like 10 years, and we were 500. We were not a good team. And I was like uh, uh, an okay high school basketball player. I walked on Iona. I was not a Division I point guard, really. I couldn't like defend. I couldn't defend you guys coming out of high school. Let me put it that way. I was not really defending Smush Parker and the guys coming out of New York like that. They were so far advanced of what I was even thinking about, honestly. But then a few years later, my brother's team, 2 years younger than me, his team, they won their section. They like 21-3, and ended up losing in the state finals. And to me, like when I think about Project Backboard, what I do now with the renovated public basketball courts, thinking about the impact that um, court had on our high school's basketball team, right? Going from we were like 12-12, and that was considered the best record in 10 years, to being 21-3, right? 4 years after that court's installed, and probably a half dozen guys went to play different levels of college basketball out of that group. Um, whereas no one had really played. There'd been one guy, a guy named John Ketch, who played Division III basketball that I knew of. That court renovation created a basketball community sort of the first time. That idea of like being able to play against guys like 3 or 5 or 10 years older or younger than you.